Alright guys, Wes here, welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to talk about one of the biggest mysteries behind God of War Ragnarok and how solving it could determine the future of the God of War series. But what if I told you that the Norse saga was not done just yet? In this video, we're going to attempt to uncover the mystery of God of War Ragnarok, as well as where Atreus' journey as the God of Mischief is headed. Are we really done with the Norse saga in the Nine Realms, or is there more coming? The ending of God of War Ragnarok left so many questions unanswered, so today we're going to dive into everything. Will the story continue in the form of a spin-off game based on Atreus or Loki, or is God of War 6 the next stop for the series? Now, I think it's safe to say that Santa Monica Studios did not disappoint with God of War Ragnarok, and the game was critically acclaimed for a reason and took home quite a few game awards, and it was my personal game of the year for 2022. But as the Ragnarok story concluded, I felt like there was something missing, and rather than getting proper closure to the story, it raised a ton more questions and left a lot of things open-ended. According to the developers, God of War Ragnarok is the end of the Norse saga, but I find that truly hard to believe. I think the developers intentionally left the story open-ended, like I said, as the segue to a future game. Now, we can argue whether or not that will be in the form of a director's cut or God of War 6, but I think Santa Monica Studios, at the request of Sony, will be developing a spin-off series based on Atreus, or in this case, Loki, the God of Mischief. Also, real quick guys, a brief spoiler alert to those of you that have not played God of War Ragnarok, but essentially at the end of God of War Ragnarok, we saw Loki go out on his own to search for the giants, which perfectly sets up the initial plot of a spin-off game. Now that kind of begs the question, who will be the antagonist of this series? Well, once again, I think the proof is in the pudding. Sindri blames Atreus for the death of Brock, and throughout Atreus' journey to find the giants, I think a subplot will be him trying to make amends for the death of Brock, which will most likely end up leading Sindri into the path of no return, or a path to seek revenge against Atreus. Sindri obviously feels responsible that Brock will not have an afterlife, so you could argue that he's more upset at himself rather than Atreus. Now, for those of you that don't remember or just look past this part, in the Forge, Brock finds out he died in the past and now has no soul. Sindri feels responsible, and if it wasn't for Atreus' desperate quest for answers, he wouldn't have ended up with Odin in his home. But the worst part of Sindri is the fact that he was the one helping Atreus. So while the argument that he's more upset at himself does make sense, I think Atreus pushes too much to try to make amends that it completely sets him off. Now, if you remember, Mimir also made it known that Brock is dead and gone with no afterlife, but in Norse mythology, there is a difference between not having an afterlife and having his soul destroyed. Today's video is sponsored by Bloodline Heroes of Lithis. This game has one of the most unique game mechanics I've ever seen, and yes, the game also looks great. Download and try out the game now for free and receive an amazing starter pack. Bloodline Heroes of Lithis is a hero collector fantasy RPG with visually stunning 3D realistic graphics on mobile devices, in which you can build your kingdom and collect champions to defend it and the world. Collect new fantasy characters that are being released into the game every fortnight with sleek designs. Customize your champions by marrying any two bloodlines in the game, such as elves, orcs, lycans, demons, demigods, dragonborn, vampires, and more, to create over 800 new fantasy hybrids. The hybrids not only inherit their own talents and traits, but also unique appearances passed down from each family tree and merged into one. This year, all players can enjoy battling in the new Guild War on brand new maps. Conquer territories with your guild members and claim rewards to create the most unique hybrid champions called Bloodcraft Legends. Other features include raising heirs with companions / waifus. You can switch genders of companions freely. The higher your companion's intimacy, the more powerful your offspring will be. In Bloodline, you could build your own kingdom and economy with strategic gameplay, and it's got beautiful scenes and interesting storylines. New bloodlines and legendary hybrids are constantly being released into the game, which means that the possibilities are endless for you to seek out the greatest hybrid to suit your style. Download the game now for free on both Android and iOS. Use my link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen right here and get a special starter pack worth $20 using my link. It includes 1 summoning crystal, 100,000 gold, and 100 diamonds. For the next 7 days, the first 20 players who leave me their in-game account ID and username in the comment section below will receive a free legendary female orc champion, Ugril, who is one of the best warriors to carry you in the game. And I'd like to reference this user, Legends of Old, on Reddit, as they explained it quite well, so take this with a grain of salt, as this is just pure speculation and headcanon, but they said, and I quote, "From the explanation of the 4 soul parts, it sounds as if the part that Sindri failed to retrieve was Brock's direction philia. This often manifests as a guardian animal, and in this game it seemingly ties one to their afterlife. It could even be said that the guardian animal part ties him to the afterlife of the Norse realm, a tether for his soul. Basically, it's not soul destruction, version, but a Pumpkin Jack scenario without anyone deliberately exiling him from an afterlife, so he could end up somewhere else in time easily. Now, realistically speaking, this likely won't happen, and the developers left things open-ended to leave the player theorizing where things will go. But as for whether or not a spin-off series could happen is quite the stretch. If we take a look at other successful PlayStation games like Spider-Man Miles Morales, Sony might have requested a new God of War game to hold people over until the next mainline release. God of War development started shortly after the release of the 2018 game, and if we end up returning to the Norse timeline with a spin-off, this could give the PlayStation 5 another God of War game or a God of Mischief game, while the greater Santa Monica Studios builds the foundation of God of War 6. As I've mentioned in my previous video, it's always possible that a DLC could happen for the game, but my gut is telling me a spin-off or a brand new IP. God of War set the stage to establish the God of Mischief series, and not only would we have a new God of War to look forward to, but we could also have a brand new series of games based solely on Loki. With how popular Loki as a character is, partly because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, telling stories based on that character would be huge for PlayStation. This might also be the reason why the writers decided not to kill Atreus and left his story quite open-ended. Why would Cory Barlog want Atreus to live and Brock to die? My guess is he clearly has other plans for Loki. Now, there's also a rumor that Cory Barlog is currently not working on a God of War 6 and rather something completely different. According to an interview at the LA Times, God of War Ragnarok producer Cory Barlog revealed that the studio is currently spread out on a lot of different things. And while he didn't go too much into detail, he has apparently been working on a new IP for many years. So what does that mean for him in the future of God of War 6? Could we see Eric Williams take the helm on all future God of War games? In the same LA Times interview, Eric Williams stated, "I remember talking to someone from another game company where they were trying to get him to leave, and they said, 'Do you want to just be known as the God of War guy for the rest of your life?' That was your big pitch to dissuade me? Because yes, I kind of do." If we look at games as a business, I'm sure Sony wants another God of War game or a spin-off as quickly as possible to kind of triple dip on the wildly successful Norse saga, or rather just Loki as a character. So if that means establishing Eric Williams as the God of War guy for all future games, that could leave Cory Barlog to work on other projects and maybe even this possible spin-off. It's worth noting that whatever the result of this spin-off game would be, it would have to tie directly into God of War 6 and would be a great way to answer the questions in the plot that was left open with the previous game. If we take a look at the development cycle, God of War 2018 took 5 years to develop, which means the next game might not release on the PS5 and rather release on the PS6, which I gotta say is kind of wild to think about. And I'm sure that's not really the ideal scenario for PlayStation, but I'm sure they're fine with it. They've got other IP that will carry the rest of the PlayStation 5 lifecycle. For instance, Spider-Man 2, Wolverine, The Last of Us, whatever Neil Druckmann is working on, and so many other first-party titles that I'm sure are currently in development for the PS5. The question now remains, when could we see all of this happen? Well, according to industry insider Jeff Grubb, he kind of alluded to PlayStation releasing games in phases. For instance, God of War Ragnarok would be in the first phase of game releases for the PlayStation 5, and a potential God of War spin-off or God of War 6 would likely happen in late phase 2, phase 3, or even the start of phase 1 with the PS6. That is, if a spin-off game is even a real thing. Like I said, a lot of this is just kind of speculation, but if God of War Ragnarok took 4 years to develop, a spin-off game would be much quicker and likely released within the next 2-ish years. Santa Monica Studios is still hard at work developing God of War Ragnarok for the inevitable New Game Plus, as well as the port to PC, so I doubt the studio's major focus right now is working on this new game. The last topic I'd like to discuss is if Cory Barlog is not working on anything God of War related, or with Atreus, what is this mysterious project? With it already being in development for, quote, years now, could we see it released relatively soon? Since Eric Williams took over the responsibility of God of War Ragnarok, that basically freed up 4 years for Cory and possibly another team of devs to create this new game. I won't even attempt to speculate on whatever that is going to be, but I'm sure whatever they're working on will be massive. Santa Monica Studios has over 250 developers, so it's not out of the question for the studio to develop 2 projects at the same time. And now that we know that the studio is already working on multiple projects and the team just shipped Ragnarok, development for this next game by Cory Barlog will likely be ramping up very soon, most likely after the New Game Plus updates out. But yeah, guys, that is going to wrap it up with this video. Let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comment section. Are we going to get a God of Mischief game, or is our next project with God of War going to be God of War 6? Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel with your notifications turned on. And thank you all again for the support. We hit 100,000 subscribers, and I'm so happy to give away that PS5 and get my plaque. Finally getting a silver play button after 11 years working on this channel. So don't forget to enter the PlayStation 5 giveaway. It's one of your last chances to do that. And thank you so much to Bloodline Heroes of Lithis for sponsoring today's video. Thanks again for watching. This has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys in the next video.